Hey everyone, I'm Lucky Collector here. I get asked a question a lot, and the question is, what machine do you use? So I thought I'd make a little video about kind of my process and how I actually create my binders. I will start off by saying this is not a DIY channel. I am not going to give you every single detail and every little thing. I've been doing graphic design for probably 20 years. I've been doing computer engineering programming for 35 years. And I've been working with machines, lasers, printers, 3D printers, and all of that for probably close to 10 years. So I have a lot of experience and time put into these. So this is not a channel to learn about that. If you want to learn about that, there's plenty of places to do that. I'm not here for that, but I will go into a little bit of detail since so many people have been asking. I always get frustrated when people ask me, what machine are you using? Because to ask me this question means that you basically stumbled upon my page or one of my binders and you said, I can do that. And you say, let me ask the creator what magical machine he picked up at Target to do this, and I'm going to go ahead and do it myself. They put no effort into research. They stopped at that point. They put no effort into research, no looking into it, no nothing. They just think, I'm going to give you some magical machine you can go pick up at Best Buy, and then you're going to get to do this. And unfortunately, it's not quite the case. So that's why I was frustrated, because everybody wants a quick fix, the quick resolve, the quick answer, and these processes take a long time. Just to give you an idea, I've been working on the color binders and how to get them and how to print them and how to get them just right for almost a year before I actually started posting them and releasing them. And even then, I still had issues and things that need to be worked out. And the designs that I keep posting, I've been working on those designs for probably the last 6-8 months. Getting all that together. So I've been prepping to be able to do this for quite some time. It's not something I just start doing on a weekend. But to answer the question, the way that I put the color onto the binder is I do what's called UV printing. Now with traditional printing, you print ink onto a substrate like paper. And when the wet ink hits the paper, it actually absorbs into the paper, and then it dries or hardens within the paper, and it becomes kind of staining or part of the paper or part of the material, fabric, etc. And so it soaks into it, it's part of it, and you can't take it off. It doesn't come out without destroying the material. You can't do this with non-porous materials. You can't do this with things that don't absorb, like metal, plastic, vinyl, leather, and of course the binders. They shouldn't be porous, right? You don't want water getting into them. So by design, you can't print on them. You could print ink on them, but the ink would just wipe off. UV ink is a specialized printing process that uses ultraviolet, the sun if you will, ultraviolet rays to what they call curing the ink instantaneously. So it prints and cures almost at the same time as it goes on. I believe the term for it is photometastasis. I can't remember. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is that what happens is that when the UV light hits the ink, it actually creates a chemical compound and substrate within the ink and kind of hardens it and creates this like hardening similar to resin in a way like that. There's two ways that the ink can bind to the material. There's a mechanical and a chemical. Mechanical is with any surface, especially on a microscopic level, there's no such thing as a pure smooth surface. There's always little micro cracks and holes and dents and caverns and all these things within these surfaces. So the ink will actually get into these, and then when they have that instant cure and it becomes like a substrate like resin, it actually will bind into these materials and kind of become like a lock and key and attach to them. The other mechanism for it is for the chemical binding. This is when the chemical reaction actually causes a melting or a binding or merging of the materials at the chemical level. And actually, it's not the same thing as absorption, but it does become part of it in that way. And so basically, when you do the UV printing, it binds to the material in a way that you cannot remove it without destroying the material in a similar way you would get with printing on paper or fabric. The primary difference here is the process and the chemicals and how that kind of takes place. It's unique in that way, and it is extremely strong in that way, but sometimes materials like metals, like I don't know how many of you know, like the display metal posters, they use UV printing, but they're UV printing on metal. And metal can be quite smooth. It does have those caverns, but you can use an adhesion promoter, which will actually in a way damage the material or damage the surface enough that allows better adhesion into that process. So these chemicals are quite hazardous. You can't touch them. You don't want to get them on your skin. They can't be exposed to the sunlight or they will harden instantly. So let's talk about the printer itself. Most printers are very expensive. There is one exception, which I'll talk about briefly, but most printers are very expensive. To get a UV printer, they usually start in the $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 range, and they go up to $150,000 for like an industrial strength. The inks themselves, there's different kinds of inks. There's the reason I say like what machine do you use is silly, because like you'll have the same style of machine or the same type of machine made by 50 different manufacturers. It's the head, the print head that matters, and the inkwell and how the dampeners are used within that really matter. And so you'll have the same exact ink head on like 50 different machines. So it really doesn't matter necessarily which machine. They all have different quirks and different benefits and pros, cons, etc. But the head really is what matters. And you run into things where UV printers expect the surface to be perfectly flat in standard ones. You have an error margin of like 2 to 3 centimeters. If you have something that's uneven or more difficult, so take the vault binders, for example, they have an extremely uneven surface, and their variation of height and depth on a cover of a vault binder is actually more than 3 centimeters at its peaks. It can be 5, 6 centimeters in some cases. And so what ends up happening is you need like a high pressure ink head, and you need specialized ink for that. So it starts getting more expensive, it starts getting more difficult, and you need like a specialized print head. And to get something like that to print on the vault binders, you need a machine that costs over $10,000 to be able to do that. And that's to be able to handle that. You also have the issue of the machines are extremely delicate and sensitive. So UV printers have to run every single day. So I have to run the UV printer every single day. Whether I print the binder or not, I have to go down and I have to print something, I have to do a nozzle check, I have to go through the whole process, doing the cleaning, all of it. Because if you don't use the printer every day, the lines and the inks will harden and clog up in the system, and you'll destroy the printhead or the entire printer itself, which is extremely expensive. So you're going on vacation, you need to have someone come over to the house and actually run the printer every single day you're gone. You can't leave it. There is the possibility to add the specialized moisturizer to what's called the inkwell, which is where the ink head goes into. If you do that, you can sometimes get a few days. If you put the ink head into the inkwell with this moisturizer, it can last a few days in some cases. There's still a risk, but it usually can last, right? So it's a lot of maintenance. On top of that, it breaks constantly. You get different inks have different sediment issues. So like white ink, for example, has to be shaked and mixed constantly. In fact, I have a mechanical piece in the inkwell to keep the white ink constantly mixing because it can't sit still. Then you have something like cyan or magenta, which are much more sensitive to sediment, so you can't shake the ink, you have to roll the ink every time you mix it. And then yellow, you can shake it, but you don't want to shake it too much. You end up with air bubbles. Then you get air bubbles in the tubes, and that will completely destroy all of it. And so if you run out of ink and you mess that up, then you've got to run the line again, and you have to be careful because the bubble can get into the ink head, and then you can destroy the ink head, which is the most expensive, the print head, which is the most expensive part. So I repair the printer, or my business partner repairs the printer probably once or twice a week. In fact, right now we're replacing the dampeners, and the dampeners are these pieces that the ink goes into, and it's where the ink is dispersed into the ink head. And what happens is the sediment and pieces of the ink build up in that, and then it doesn't work properly. So you have to replace them every 3 to 6 months. So the machines require a huge amount of effort to understand, to learn, to master, to maintain, to keep, right? There's also different types of ink, and I'll talk about why that's important. Is there's soft, neutral, and hard inks. The difference is what they're intended for. So hard ink is intended for flat, hard surfaces like a poster, the metal posters, for example, a piece of plastic, wood, something that's not going to bend. It has a strong adhesion, but it's not flexible. So bending it will crack it. And it's not geared towards wear and tear. It doesn't handle getting rubbed and hit very often. You don't want to use these on a binder because if you bend the binder, if you bend the fabric, that can crack, it can break over time, and it becomes more brittle over time, and it's not good for like rubbing up against it and stuff like this. Then there's soft ink, which is extremely flexible, and they use it for like fabrics and printing on t-shirts and hats and these types of things. But it's also, the colors are not as vibrant, and you also end up with the issue of it has a very low, or has a lower adhesion. So it doesn't bind very well to things like the binders and things like this because of the nature of the flexible ink. So I use a neutral ink, which is a combination of the two, which gives it a strong adhesion, super bright colors, but it also can be bent to a degree, not as much as the flexible, but it's not a t-shirt, it's a binder. So you'd have to like I mean, I've bent it all the way without it cracking, but at some point, potentially, you could damage it if you, well, I don't know how. If you ripped the cover off and like rolled it up, that might scratch it, but I use a very special ink. It's a very high-end ink. It's low VOC. It's a lot safer. I know there's some competitors out there who are doing similar things, and people complain about the odors of them, and that's because they're using very expensive, high-powered or high-pressure inks, which are extremely toxic, and they have a lot of odor and VOCs that come off of it. My goal here is to create something that's a little bit more on the safe side, so I don't take that route. But you do have to be very cautious with that. So there is one on the market, I'm sure most of you have probably seen at some point or another, called Eufimake, which is a DIY at-home UV printer. This one is around a $3,000, $4,000 mark. The reason that this is not a good choice, and I know one person who is using it, but you have to be careful with this one, is number one, it's brand new. There's lots of issues and bugs. I'm sure they'll work it out, but it's a little bit buggy right now. The other issue is that they are limited in their ink. So they only sell 100 milliliter ink containers. I buy ink by gallons, right? And so they don't produce enough ink. So I wouldn't be able to produce the volume with that particular printer. On top of it, they're using their own proprietary ink variation, which has the colors are not as vibrant. It's not, and I've tested it. I don't think it looks very good. The colors tend to be a lot more dull. Longevity of the colors and the material is still kind of unknown. There is some shown wear and tear and worn out after 3 years. So I wanted something that could last a lifetime, that would be very strong and sturdy. And Eufimake just couldn't produce that. But on top of that, the big issue is that they only currently have hard inks. And so when you print a hard ink from theirs onto a surface and you bend that binder, you really risk it cracking and chipping and coming off the binder, and that's a low quality. So it'll look good until you drop it or smack it or rub it or bend it, and then it's going to start chipping away. Now they do have soft ink that's on the market for coming, but it's only white. And so what they'll do is they print the white ink as a soft ink, and then they print the color ink on top of that, which has better, but it's got low adhesion because it's a soft ink, and it's also very limited in how much they have of it. So it's not a very good long-term production machine. What I have is a much more expensive production machine that produces high quality, high color prints that can last, a lifetime. And that's kind of the goal, is you want these to be with you forever, right? This is your collection. So anyway, so that's kind of what my process is with the machines. On top of that, I would say with the designs, I try really hard to create something unique that has the feel and the look of the set and the tone of the set and feels like a part of it, because like for me, these collections are really important to me. I look at them, I enjoy them. It's a memory for me. I remember when I put it together. So like having the binder be a part of it, it needs to be part of that collection. I don't like just slapping artwork on it. I don't like just slapping like the SIR artwork on the front of it. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying you can't buy that or you shouldn't buy that or whatever, but to me, it's like, I want something more than that. I feel like Ultra Pro does that, right? And so I want something more unique than that. And that's what I'm always trying to create. And that's why my designs are unique. And I think they're the most unique on the market because they have that kind of look. And again, I've had a long history of graphic design and skills that have allowed me to kind of create something modern and clean and professional looking that comes out looking just fantastic. And I think all of you have seen, like you show up at game night or pre-release night and people are just like, where did you get that? Because it just stands out. Where like an Ultra Pro is just kind of like, eh. Now to do this requires skills that you can learn, graphic design style skills and all that. But there's also understanding of like distribution on the page, content, how it comes out, color understanding. Printers all work in CMYK, not RGB. So you have to understand that color spectrum, what colors match, which colors go together, what's going to print well, how does it display on there, what isolates certain letters. And that kind of stuff is really important because not everything works. You can't just print anything you want and it looks wonderful. Like it takes an effort and sometimes trial and error to really kind of master that. And like I said, these designs that I've been posting recently, I've been working for 6-8 months. I mean, some of these designs take weeks and I'll often put a whole design together and then I'll walk away and I'll come back a day later and be like, no, it's all wrong, and I'll start over. Or sometimes I know exactly what I want to get out of that. I see the set and I'm like, this is perfect. I know what I want. I've seen some other people out there like who are taking like, the SIR artwork and they're using AI to like pull Charizard out and slap it on the front. And it doesn't look terrible. It's not bad. And if you like that, why not, right? But again, trying to create something unique, a specialty item, if you will, for someone, because again, if you're a true collector, this is something you're going to have for a long time. It's something you're going to show your kids or enjoy when you're old, or kind of look at. And that's really what I think about when I kind of put these things together. And that's also why I started Unlucky Binders, was I couldn't find anything out there. I'm already working on some better improvements. The XL is going to be coming soon, that has 720 cards, which I think is better than the 624 that most of them have, because a lot of master sets or grandmaster sets get really big. I've got the 9 pockets coming. The lay flat design. I've lost multiple sets with Vault X because of the bending. And if I don't open them or I don't use them much, it's fine. But like if I go to a show and I'm like opening it, or you see the vendors with their binders open, like it's terrible. So trying to fix some of those issues and trying to make something that's truly there. And again, it's a community binder, right? I've had a lot of feedback from the community already, and I'm already starting to make adjustments and changes and improvements based on what people want to see, right? Because the goal here is that we can build something amazing together. So I've also set those up to be able to be printed on properly, and trying to build something that we can all enjoy and appreciate. So again, hopefully this answers a few questions. Again, I'm not a DIY channel. Don't ask me for tips and tricks and which machine and what to buy and where to buy it, because I'm not going to tell you, and I will probably ignore those questions. So just be worried. But hopefully this gives some ideas as to what the process looks like and what I'm doing, and gives you confidence in knowing that we're building a quality product and it's something that can last your lifetime. So I appreciate the support, and I hope everyone has a great time and happy collecting.